those who don't know me, that's a terrible picture of me, but a brilliant picture of Becky, isn't that right?
A horrible picture of me that I hate every time.
So together, Becky and I will run something called HR Energy, which is a collaboration between us to provide events and networking events to HR professionals. So really pleased to be joined today by Kelly Swingler. She's going to talk to us about how we got to here, but now how HR need to move on to get to there. And she'll probably wave her arms around as much as me, or not. You'll have to wait and see. There's some QR codes on the screen if you want to connect with us, but I'm about to skip away from that because before we start, I'm going to introduce Helen Fitzhugh from UEA. I'll explain why in 1 second. So some housekeeping. I'm going to do the introductions. Becky's going to come along at the end and do the outros. We're recording this. Use the chat function if you want to talk to us, but more importantly, talk to Kelly as we go through. And if really good questions come up as we go through, we will deal with them, but there'll also be some time at the end for questions. We'll be out and done well by 11 o'clock. There'll be a pop-up as you leave in the usual way for you to give us some wonderful feedback about how it's gone today, and Becky will remind you about that. Right, so we were contacted by Helen from UEA about the Good Jobs project, and I'm going to invite Helen just to say a couple of words about that, and then we'll move on and get to Kelly. Is that all right, Helen?
That's wonderful, thank you. Yes, so I am from Norwich Business School at the University of East Anglia, and I'm currently leading the Good Jobs project, which is funded by the Norwich Good Economy Commission. And as it says on the screen in front of you, thank you for racking that up. We're exploring ways to support managers and employees in Norwich to embed good experiences of work into the way they build back after COVID-19. And the reason why we're doing this is we've got a fair bit of evidence from previous research on what makes a good job for all sorts of people. It's not just about the thing that they do, but also the way that they are managed and how the environment is set up for that job. But in order to support Norwich in particular, we wanted to discuss kind of the challenges, successes that people have faced over the pandemic, so that when we start producing evidence-based resources to send out to people to use, they take into consideration all the practical things that people have been experiencing over the last year. So what we'd love to do is we'd love to hear from Norwich-based employers and also Norwich-based employees. And there's two ways of doing this. One is just to email me, and my email address is at the bottom of that screen, but I'll also post it in the chat when I'm done talking. And those are just for 30-minute discussions, one-to-one with one of our research team. Very, very, informal, just getting some feedback from people. And then we've also got two focus groups next week on Monday, the 28th, 10 a.m. and 4 a.m, specifically for frontline employees. And it will be just again a chance to kind of give your views on what have been things that have gone really well, how Norwich-based employers have kind of risen to the challenge of maintaining employee wellbeing and performance, so we can learn from that, and also anything that we need to consider, think about and bring evidence to bear on from the work we've been doing on wellbeing at Norwich Business School. So I'd love to hear from people. I'll put all the details in the chat, but I just want to say thank you very much for James and Becky letting me do that plug at the start of today.
You're most welcome. I'm very conscious that Becky hasn't really spoken, so I don't want it just to be about me. So Becky, say something insightful.
No, absolute pleasure. And yeah, I'd really encourage everybody, you have that time just to get in touch with Helen, because it's a really amazing project that I hope you get some really good responses to, Helen.
Thank you very much. That's great. I'll pop some details in the chat, but my email address is there, and I'm also on Twitter at Dr. Fitzhugh. So if anyone wants to get into contact with me about this or anything else well-being or performance related, that's my wider role as well. So please do be in contact.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to move to the main event. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because Kelly's going to present to us without the aid of slides. She's just going to be magnificent and give it to us. So there you go. Kelly, over to you.
No pressure. Magnificent. It's a little bit early on a Wednesday morning, but thank you for that. So so great to be with you all this morning. Becky got in touch. Becky and I think we haven't actually spoken to each other for about 10 years. And I think we probably worked together maybe 15 or 16 years ago. So,
something like that.
Yeah, so it was completely out of the blue that Becky dropped me a note to ask if I would come and speak to you all today. So I suppose just very briefly in terms of my background before I kind of get into today's talk. So I've been really in the kind of HR and people space now for about 22 years. I have, I suppose, always been a little bit different in terms of thinking and in terms of my approach. So for example, it has been, I have not done anything like an annual performance appraisal since 2008. And one of my big focuses since 2008, whilst I was in the corporate world, was all about burning the handbook. And that's something that really has stuck with me all of this time. 7 years ago, I left corporate and I set up a people and change consultancy based in Peterborough in Cambridgeshire, but we work with clients all over the place. So I set up people and change consultancy, the Chrysalis crew, and really the focus has been up until now on helping organisations, particularly HR teams, to be able to do things differently, really looking at different ways that we can create people first workplaces. And I think really for me, that's what my passion and drive has all been up until this point. And I think from what we've seen over the last kind of 12 to 18 months really is for me a real opportunity for us within the HR sector, for us as HR professionals, to really start to do things differently. And I think at the beginning of the pandemic, in amongst all of the chaos and all of the madness, a lot of the organisations that I was speaking to, leaders, CEOs, HR teams, I just continued to be excited about what could come of all of these changes that we may be able to see in the world of work. So this morning, I suppose I want to give you a little bit of what has got us here, what's been working well for HR up until this point, but then actually what it is that we need to be doing differently. How do we change our approach? How do we change our focus to allow us to be much more people focused and to really allow all of us to help to change the world of work whilst not forgetting ourselves in that process. So that's kind of what I'm going to go through with you, I suppose, for this morning. I can talk for England. I think Becky and James have been kind of lined up. So if you do have questions, do keep typing them in the chat and they will continue to interrupt me as much as is necessary to make sure that you get all of your questions answered. I think whenever you have given your time to come to an event like this, it's really important that you do get your questions answered rather than just having people speak at you for kind of an hour or so. So I think that's the kind of running agenda for today. So if we're okay, should we get started? Perfect. Okay. So I suppose again from my perspective, where are we? Kind of what's the background in terms of HR? So as I said, I've been in the HR and people space now for about 22 years. And during that time, I think when I started with the John Lewis Partnership. So the HR function itself was called Staff and Training. I've worked in staff and training. I have worked in personnel. I have worked in HR. I have worked in people and change. I have worked in people and culture. But regardless of what we have been called and what I've been called, in addition probably to many of my HR titles, but in terms of all of those things, primarily from my perspective, our role has been about creating these people first workplaces. When I first joined HR, the driving force for me really, so I initially had wanted to go into law. And after lots of work experience and lots of cluttered workplaces and lots of things that I didn't necessarily like in the legal firms that I was working at, decided that law was not for me. And then had absolutely no idea what it was that I wanted to do. But this thing called HR really kept popping up. And I think I also started to recognise that a lot of my friends and family and other colleagues were going through what I kind of started to term as this Monday to Friday dying syndrome, whereby on a Sunday evening, we would start to worry about going to work on a Monday. Monday, we'd spend all day talking about our weekend. Tuesday and Wednesday, we'd probably actually think, you know, we probably should be getting on with some work, but our days are full of meetings. We're not really quite sure what it is that we need to do. Thursday comes and we've realised that we've only got one day left until the weekend. Hurrah, it's going to be brilliant. And then Friday comes and we realise that we've got to fit a week's worth of work into our Friday. So our early finish was never here because we would be in the office till 6, 7 or 8 o'clock at night, getting done everything that we hadn't been able to do during the week. And in addition to that, we were working with managers that didn't appreciate us, values that were not really being seen across organisations. And a lot of my friends and family were also really not being paid what they thought they needed to be paid. So for me, entering this world of HR was actually something that was quite phenomenal, because I felt that I had the opportunity to literally change the world of work, to stop this Monday to Friday dying syndrome, and to really start to make a difference, create some energy and some colour within workplaces, get managers and leaders leading and managing effectively, and really get people excited about what they were doing. And 22 years later, I probably haven't made the dents that I wanted to make. I've made some, but I still see so many things that need to be changed. And I think one of the big things within HR, I've definitely been termed as, things like the policy police. I have been the Iron Queen. I have been the Ice Lady. I have been the Rottweiler. I have been called many of these things throughout my 22 years in my career. But I think as I started to do things differently, as I said, I haven't done a performance appraisal since 2008. And I think as I started to look at different ways of doing things and the difference between the leaders that put their people first and the leaders that don't, I also then really started to recognise the difference in the HR teams as well. So where leaders put their people first, there is a completely different output that comes from HR. We are not the policy police. We are not borrowing and stealing policies from other people to get them into place within our organisations. We are able to engage much more effectively with our people. We are able to listen much more effectively. We have small focus groups. We're constantly talking to people where our leaders see this people first value across their organisation, where they put their people first and where they value their HR teams and their HR functions. On the flip of that, where I have seen leaders that are still a little bit confused by all of this HR stuff, don't really know what it is, but HR do the people stuff. And we still talk about the kind of fluffy stuff, right? HR do the fluff, like there's nothing fluffy about HR, definitely not if we're doing it right. But sometimes that is still the way that we are seen within our organizations. So where leaders are chucking all of the stuff at HR really that they don't want to do, that's where it then starts to become much more difficult for us to be able to do our roles effectively. That's where we do become maybe the people pleasers. We don't want to say no to anything. We want to take it all. We want to be seen as the people that can make the difference. We want to be seen as the people that are really helping to create better places to work. We want to be solving problems. We want to be doing all of this great stuff. And actually, we embrace a lot of that. And I think we embrace a lot of this people pleasing. We embrace a lot of the give it to HR will sort it. And I think one thing that I don't think anybody can argue with, if ever there is a crisis, HR are the ones to be able to fix it. I think we are the most amazing firefighting crisis managers really in any workplace. Give us a crisis and we will run with it, we will fix it, we will go with it, we will work every single hour available to us to make sure that we fix it, that we turn it around, and that we do everything that we need to do. We won't say no to you. We want to say yes. We want to be valued. We want to keep driving. We want to keep making this our mission. And really a lot of that is where we've got to. We then last year had a brand new F word and a brand new C word that all of a sudden we weren't disciplining people for using within the workplace, and all things started to get a little bit like what was going on. And there was panic and there was upset and there was a lot of uncertainty, and there were a lot of difficulties. And I think particularly when this furlough word and all of these schemes started to get chucked around, I think again what we saw as HR professionals was literally every single person in the world became an expert in employment law and everything that needed to be done with HR. You know, we even had Martin Lewis, the money man, didn't we, talking to us about contracts and what it meant for people within their workplaces and all of these sorts of bits and pieces. Everybody became an expert in employment law.
To be fair, I thought Martin Lewis did quite a lot quite right.
He absolutely did.
Yeah.
He absolutely did. He also upset a lot of HR professionals along the way, but he did do lots of things right. He did do lots of things right. So yes, good point, James. But I think, you know, we started to see this as we were going through, and certainly a lot of the HR professionals that I have been speaking to over the last 12 months, whilst again, they were in crisis mode, getting everything fixed, getting everything as it needed to be done. I think first and foremost, we dealt with the crisis. We did what needed to be done. We put the people first. We dealt with all of those things. But I do know there were HR professionals, I've spoken to many of them, who during these government updates around furlough and the employment and everything that was going to be happening, which it was really lovely that these were taking place at 5 o'clock on a Friday, because it, you know, like we'd not already done a week's worth of work already, but 5 o'clock on a Friday, let's, you know, chuck it to the HR people and they can work all weekend trying to get all of these things right. But during some of those updates, I know HR professionals that were being called during those updates by their CEOs, by their exec teams, and by people across their organizations during the updates to say, okay, what does this mean for us? And it's like, I'm watching the same update as you. I have absolutely no idea. Let's do a call afterwards. And that's what was happening. So many of you, some of you were working long into the night trying to understand all of these updates. And you were then working all weekend to ensure that the paperwork, the information, the communication, all of the messages that needed to go out, you were working tirelessly all weekends to make sure that they were ready to go to your people on that Monday morning. And some of you were getting thanked for that, and some of you weren't. So I just want to pause here to say to you, if you did not get the thanks that you think or you felt you deserved over the last 12 months, I thank you. I see you, I see your hard work, I see your efforts, I see how tirelessly you were trying to get all of this stuff changed. And I see that you were doing this at the same time as also having to work from home, as also maybe dealing with homeschooling, as also going through your own situation of what these last 18 months meant for everybody else. You were going through it at the same time. And some of you didn't acknowledge that you were also part of this, and some of you did, and some of you talked about it and some of you didn't, and some of you just kept on going in terms of work, and some of you started to get to burnout but still did not talk. So I see every single thing that every single one of you have been doing over the last 18 months and beforehand to ensure that every single person within your organizations was treated as a person, was treated with respect, and has been able to get to the point that we are now. So I see that within you. I see the firefighting, I see the crisis fighting, I see the passion, I see the enthusiasm, and I see also that all of you also want to stop this Monday to Friday dying and ensuring that your people have great places to work. But we do need to start to do things differently, because what got us here is not going to get us to where we need to be in the future. It's not going to work. So a little bit of soapbox, I suppose, here from me before I maybe hopefully then go into some solutions and some hints and tips of the things that we can start to do. But as I started by saying, I got really excited kind of 18 months ago at the prospect, the fact that we could in effect get the whole world working from home when many leaders and CEOs had said this stuff could never be done. I got excited about, because we showed that we were able to do it. And we showed that we could communicate, and we showed that we could still recruit, we could still engage, we could still train, we could still develop, we could do all of this stuff that makes the workplace great. And we did it during one of the most difficult times, or certainly the most difficult time in my lifetime, and I'm sure for many of you, that we have ever been through. but we did it and we succeeded. And I've been a judge on many kind of award panels over the last few months, looking at some of the amazing stuff that organizations have been doing over the last 18 months for their people. And I feel inspired and delighted and really proud of many of the efforts that we've seen on what it is that we can do to start putting our people first and really, really change the world of work. But then we started talking about getting people back to work, didn't we? And now we've got this brand new word, hybrid working. And we've got a LinkedIn poll every single day, click the emoji to tell us how many days you're going to be working in the office, and click the emoji to tell us how many days you want to be working from home, and click the emoji to tell us this, and vote on 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever it is that it may be. We've got all of these votes going on. But what a lot of leaders are not doing is actually talking to their people and saying, what is it that you want? And what has continued to be one of my biggest frustrations, and I had a rant about this yesterday on a LinkedIn Live with my good friend Laura from the US. But a lot of the time when it comes to our people within our organizations, our leaders want to know, where has this worked before? The year that I worked with my chief exec to scrap annual performance appraisals, a lot of leaders within that organization wanted to know, where has this worked before? Where's the evidence that says that this works? When my own organization started to work a 4-day working week, lots of people started talking about the fact that this won't work. Where's the evidence that says it supports it? And when it comes to people, we want evidence. Show us where this has worked before. Show us where, we want innovative and creative HR professionals, but only if you can copy and paste something that worked really well in this organization, then bring it into what we do here. So when it comes to people, we want to know where it's worked before. Yeah, when it comes to customers, when it comes to marketing, when it's coming to sales, when it's coming to any other function, probably within your organization, we don't want to know what's working everywhere else, because we want to be one step ahead of the game. Our leaders want us to be innovative and creative and coming up with solutions and ways of working that are totally different than what anybody else is doing, because that's going to give us the competitive edge, that's going to give us the market lead, and that's what's going to set us apart from everybody else. And then we come to people, it's like, oh no, we don't want any of that. No, just show us where it's worked before, or just allow us to keep on doing what it is that we've done before. And then we wonder why we're not employers of choice. We wonder why we're trying to find talent. We wonder why we're struggling to find managers and leaders with the skills that they need in order to take them forwards. We don't understand why innovative and creative HR professionals don't want to stay within those organizations, because we become the policy police. The organization that I was recruited into as HR director had headhunted me based on the stuff that they'd heard me do for my previous organization. And tractor going past, but they wanted my talent. They wanted my creativity. They wanted my innovation. That's what got me that job. And then in my first week, they said, Kelly, we want you to approve our dress code policy and get this signed off with our employee forum. And here's a massive grievance disciplinary type, really complex issue that we want you to deal with. That was not creative or innovative HR in any way, shape or form. And trying to get both of those over the line, I think the dress code policy that was like 5 pages, right? With things like, women must not wear a skirt that is more than 1 centimetre above their knee. We must not be showing more than 1 square centimetre of tattoo. Who did they think was going to be walking around with a ruler? Because it certainly wasn't me and my team. We had much more important things to be doing, like changing the world of work. But this is what they'd wanted to put in the policy. But I needed to understand why that's where we'd started. Why was that so important? And when I got to the bottom of this is why it's needed, we were able to just pull together a couple of lines that said, dress appropriately for the occasion. That became our dress code policy. And with this complex disciplinary grievance thing that had, in effect, an entire leadership team of one team, I didn't understand where we were. The disciplinary and grievance process, all of these words, I didn't understand where anybody was in the process. I didn't understand what had been done up to that point. And in effect, I scrapped it all. I went back to everybody and I said, what is it you want? What's the issue and how can we resolve it? And this issue that had been going on for over 9 months, I solved within 4 weeks.
Why did they recruit you, Kelly? If they did they actually do proper due diligence on you to understand what you were going to do? Because it seems like
they had said they wanted to, but again, I think this is an interesting thing, isn't it? I think a lot of the time when we talk about creativity and innovation in HR, we think we want it until we actually start to see what needs to change. And if it means you as a leader need to be leading more effectively, well, no, I don't want any of that. If it means our managers need to be managing more effectively, no, we don't really want any of that. If it means we're going to be totally ripping stuff up, there is obviously some risk involved with that. And some of that is we're just not ready for it.
Can I just say a dress code policy that says not more than a centimetre above the knee is just mind-boggling.
And it's like, did I do enough due diligence when I joined the organisation? Yes, I did. You know, I had spoken to lots and lots of different people. It was a ridiculous process. I'd spoken, you know, but I think what I realised, everybody had done an amazing job of really selling this. And everybody was on the same page. Everybody would give slightly different stories, but actually, I suppose nobody there had done the HR director role. There was no HR director within that role. So, and I think had I spoken to the HR director, who I later found, she would have probably said, "Do not do it." But there we are. I did what I could to try and change it. And this is, you know, we live to tell another tale. But thank you. Yeah, an interesting one. But again, I think that's you know, these are some of the things that we need to look at. So I'm sure all of you have got familiar stories like that you can talk about. But in terms of the future of HR, I think we really need to start asking our leaders, asking our organisations, what do you want and need from HR? That has to be our starting place. Because as I started by saying, as I kind of alluded to there, depending on the type of leaders that we have within our organisations, they may want and need a different sort of HR. Some may want innovative and creative, some may want the policy police, some may want people that are just in effect dictating what needs to be done, and some people may want a kind of VaynerMedia. I don't know if any of you are familiar with VaynerMedia, but VaynerMedia and Claude Silver is absolutely amazing. But basically all she does is speak to 700 people on a daily basis to find out what it is that they love about the organization. Now, it could be that is something that your organizations want, that your leaders want, and it could be that they don't want you having anything to do with people across the organization. They just want you doing policies and processes. So we've got to start by having the conversations with our leaders about what do you want and need from your HR function? What do you want and need from me as your HR leader? And then co-create that together. Because where I see one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest kind of areas of misalignment is where HR think this is what I'm here to do because this is what you recruited me for, but they never get anything over the line with their leaders because the leaders want something completely different. But we've never had that open and honest conversation to allow us to recognize that actually we're not on the same page at all. So we keep fighting and pushing and creating all of this stuff to go to board, and board don't want to look at any of that stuff because they don't think that we're aligned or understand the needs of our business. So the first point of call has to be, what do you need from your HR function? What are you expecting from your HR function? What does it look like? How can we create that? And if that's not for you, if you've got different ideas, get all of those on the table. But we've got to really start by redefining, recreating what that looks like in each of our organizations. And what it looks like in my organization may be very different in James's organization, may be very different in Becky's organization. But we can start to have those sorts of conversations and do what it is that we need to do. We've also got to stop the people pleasing. When I hear from HR team, you know, they're feeling undervalued, the marketing team are doing marketing. The finance team are doing finance. The sales team are doing sales. And yet for a lot of us within HR, again, we're doing whatever it is that anybody asks us to do. And unless we have those boundaries and unless we're able to say, no, that's not under our remit, where after we have redefined our role and aligned our role to what the organization needs, then we can start to put better boundaries and better barriers in place. That's how we start to become the people experts. That's how we become seen as the people experts rather than the people pleasing yes people that just police all of these policies. There were lots of P's there, weren't there? But we've got to be starting with what is it that we're here to do, and then pushing back on the stuff that is not within our remit. No other expert within your organizations will be doing stuff that does not fall into their remit. And we have to recognize that we also shouldn't be doing the same. We also have to be role modeling much more of the things that we are asking others to do. Again, I speak to lots and lots of HR teams. We're talking to people about the importance of personal development, yet we are not developing ourselves. We are talking to people about well-being across the organization, yet we are not looking after ourselves. We are talking to managers and teams about not working long hours, and yet we are working long hours. We are talking to teams about prioritizing workloads, and we are not prioritizing our own. And part of this disconnect is where other people see that. They see that we're telling this team to do something, but we're not doing it for ourselves. And in some ways, actually, we're kind of coming across as a bit hypocritical, kind of do as I say, not as I do. We've got to be role modeling. If learning and development, if this training culture or coaching culture is important in your organization, you have to be role modeling that. You don't sit as separate to the rest of the organization. You are a person within that organization too. You are a leader within that organization too. And as such, you fit within that group. Now, again, I know for me with some of my internal roles, it was, oh, okay, we want this training and development. And Kelly, we want you to be doing it. We want you to design our management development. We want you to design our leadership development. And I could do it based on my background. But in doing that, I was never then part of that group. Whereas in order for me to be part of that group, I need to outsource some of that stuff to some other organizations if it's important to do. So again, as you are redefining and looking at your role within the organization, are you part of that team or are you separate from that team? How are you viewed? Where do you sit? What does that look like? So we've got to realign. We've got to put boundaries in place. We've got to role model. Our three priorities, as I see it kind of going forward, have to be our people. They have to be well-being, and they have to be ways of working. So people, well-being, and ways of working. And again, when I say people, this kind of hybrid model that I was talking about a moment ago, we need to be speaking to our people and finding out what they need. But I also think we've got to be allowing flex in whatever way that looks like for at least the next 3 to 6 months. The last 18 months has not been normal working from home. It has been working from home during a pandemic. It has been working from home while the world around us has been closed. It has been working from home whilst homeschooling. It has been working from home without us being able to do all of the things that we would ordinarily do. It has been working from home with 5 or 6 or 4 or 3 of us battling for internet connections and having to stagger our meetings to ensure that we've all got enough bandwidth to all do our Zoom calls for our team meetings that we need to be doing. As the world starts to open up around us again, as you know, we've got summer holidays coming up. So for those that are parents, soon the kids are going to be off school again. I don't really think we can start to make decisions about where we work or how we want to work until at least September, because the world needs to open up around us. We need to understand what our own normal may look like. And whilst I know some people at the minute that are talking to me about desperately missing their commute, I know that after a week of them doing it again, they will be thinking, I do not want to do this ever again. But for now, an hour and a half on a train into London seems like a really lovely thing, because there will be no kids screaming, there will be no dogs barking. They will be able to read their book or listen to their music. They can ignore everybody on the platform and they can ignore everybody on the train. So they can go back to being totally insular. But I guarantee you that after, you know, when the weather starts to turn, or when they realise that getting up at 6 in the morning to be at the station at 6:45, that's very, very quickly going to lose its appeal. It may not, but we're not going to know until we allow those things to happen. And I think we've genuinely got to have a bit of a calming down period before we move from the crisis and the pace of the last 18 months to then going another 500 miles an hour to get us to where it is that we need to go. And we as HR professionals really need to be guiding some of that. We need to be allowing people to take a breath, to slow down, to talk about, to acknowledge what the last 18 months has been like for them. Let's have that kind of collective show. Again, my friend Laura and I spoke in our live yesterday about this kind of collective deep breath, this collective exhale. Stop, reflect, take the time. Take the time to really listen to your people. Don't just be telling them what to do. I think it was our end of last week, Deloitte's basically saying our people can work wherever they want for as long as they want, and this is what we're going to do to support them. That's the only organisation I've seen that has actually said, we are going to listen to our people. It's your choice. As long as the work is delivered, this is where we're going to go. Lots of other organisations are talking about flex, home, hybrid, working from coffee shops, continuing whatever it is that you want to do, closing offices. But a lot of that is not happening in consultation with people. We're not really talking to our people. And when I say communication and putting people first, it's not just the telling and the talking, it is the listening. I think sometimes listening is not something that we do particularly well in HR. Somebody comes to us with an issue and we're automatically then reaching for the policy that tells them how it is that they're going to fix it. Whereas again, taking that breath, listening and asking actually, what is the outcome that you would like from this? What do you want from this conversation? How can I help you get there? Rather than going straight for the policy. We've got to genuinely be putting our people first. And then when it comes to well-being, this isn't, another free fruit Friday. This isn't a team quiz on Zoom. Again, really speaking to your people about well-being. What does well-being mean for them? We've got emotional, physical, mental, financial, spiritual even. Well-being isn't just about a free yoga class. It covers it covers entire aspects. It touches every touch point of our lives. And if we're only looking at one tiny bit of that, and again, assuming that we have the answer to the thing, we probably don't. Well-being for me may be very different for all of you. So again, we need to talk to our people, but well-being has to continue to be something that is not just for the last 18 months. Well-being has to be something that we're seeing on a daily basis, day in and day out. And again, when it comes to ways of working, this may come into where we work, but also when. If we've allowed our people to have a little bit more flex, again, I know people who, because of the type of jobs that they do, they've not been able to be working from home productively necessarily during, say, 10 and 4 on a daily basis because other members of the family have needed internet connection. But they've been getting up, doing a few hours in the morning, and then they've been doing a few hours in the evening. They've been delivering on their job. But that level of true flexibility, true flex hours has allowed them to be much more productive, has allowed them to create much more balance in their lives, to genuinely be able to have a work-life balance. So can we be utilizing technology more? Can we be looking at different ways of work? Can we be looking at different hours? Can we be looking at different days? Can we be condensing hours, lengthening hours? What is it that's going to work? But this all has to start from coming from our people.
So, Kelly, do you have a view on whether employers should deal with an influx of flexible working requests from people who say, hang on a minute, I've been able to work flexibly whilst we've had enforced working from home. I want to retain that. Or should we be saying, well, I can't discourage you from putting a flexible working request in, but actually we've listened to everybody, we've thought about it, this is how we think it's going to work, let's do it on a trial basis and go through some sort of listening and consultation and see where we get to, because otherwise you're going to end up with first come first serve, which is just not going to work, is it?
No, and again, I think you're right there. I think in terms of trial, some people, I think, again, people that I've been speaking to over the last few months, some of them are absolutely saying, I never ever want to go back to an office. And some of their employees are saying, okay, that's fine. Some people are saying, I do want to go back. Some people are already talking about different hours and different ways of working. And again, I think some people really have been kind of producing their own case studies over the last 12 or 18 months that said, okay, so this worked, you said it couldn't, this worked, you said it couldn't, I've been able to do this, I've been able to perform better on this, I've been able to perform better on that. So I think lots of people have started to produce their own case studies. I suppose where my biggest concern comes from is whether some leaders and, you know, some HR professionals would just say, well, actually, no, we're going to have a blanket approach and we've decided that this is going to happen. I think if we do that, we are going to see a huge churn in terms of people wanting to leave our organisations, because I think the fact that they have been able to do it in a way that has, you know, it's not been perfect for everybody. Lots of people have had, you know, lots and lots of difficulties, but the fact that we've been able to do it demonstrates that we can do it. And I think that, yeah, trials, I think, are going to be really, really important. First comes, first serve, I don't think is necessarily going to be fair. But again, I think as we saw with even flex work requests before the pandemic, you know, if you haven't got kids, maybe you shouldn't need it. If you haven't got caring responsibilities, maybe you don't need it. Actually, some people just want it because they want a better balance in their lives. You know, I've got a friend of mine, she enjoys spending Friday with her horses, but her one organisation refused to let her work flexibly to be able to have more flexibility on a Friday. So she left and went somewhere that allowed her to have that. So I think we've got to continue to be open. We've got to speak to our people. Of course, we need to manage what's best for the business and what's best for our people. But I think we can maintain that, you know, I think we genuinely can maintain that flex if we talk to people, if we put some of those trials in, and if we just see what comes out of it.
I was about to say, there has to be an element of empowering people to be able to do what they want is great, but at the same time, you've got to do it for the best of the organization, and allowing everybody to be working from home actually may not be for the best for the organization or the people. And I won't cite the obvious one about junior people's development and things like that, and coming together for innovation. There has to be what works best for all parties. And I think a lot of people are saying, well, I've listened to everybody, but you come down with I've heard about this, an 80-page document that says, well, this is how hybrid working is going to work.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's much easier to just say everyone has to be in 60% or out 60% of the time. And you just cut through a lot of that. I'm not saying that that's right, but that is a way of doing it.
Yeah. And you won't know again, you know, I think until you speak to your people, you might be surprised. Actually, everybody might want to come back to the office.
Those people's definition of what they call flexible, isn't it? Because we're saying we're going to have flexible working. And I've seen an example of we're going to work flexibly, but being dictated as to you'll be in the office these 2 days.
Yeah, and that's not flex. You know, if you say to me, you have to be in the office on a Monday, a Wednesday and a Friday, but Tuesday and Thursday you can work from, like, there's no flex. That's not flex. That's a different working pattern. That's just where I work on 5 days a week.
Yeah, and that's where we're seeing these discussions now. It's about being really open about what you mean as flexible. It's meeting the needs of the organisation. Yeah. I imagine some environments are smaller, so you've kind of got to have some control of who's in the office what days because of the social distancing.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, really understanding your people, and again, I think that balance between, you know, again, let's say everybody from the organisation decides that they want to go back to the office. The business may have decided that actually we've worked out that our office is costing us X amount of money. The productivity of our people hasn't faltered over the last however long, and therefore the cost of the offices actually isn't viable for us anymore as a business. So we don't want the office. But if you've got an entire organisation that are saying we all want to come back to the office because we've missed X, Y, and Z, again, that's a very different conversation that you need to be having. And I don't really think we're taking as much of that into account as also it being the other, you know, kind of the other way around. So all of these things, we're not going to know unless we speak to our people. We genuinely won't know.
And interestingly, there's a question here from Gillian. Again, it's about the flexible and how people are feeling fairly treated, that there's some employees who are having to work harder to meet customer demands on the phone during the day for those who can actually want to work out of core hours. So again, for the employees, it's how they all feel that they're being treated fairly and all have the same balance.
Yeah. And I think, again, that's a good one. I've definitely seen over the last 18 months this divide and actually a number of divide between furloughed and non-furloughed, divided between people that can work from home and people that haven't been able to work from home. And I have really started, and even some of the language that, you know, that's being used, you're one of the furloughed lot, as though it's, you know, was maybe a bit of a dirty word in some instances. You've just been working from home, you've had it quite easy. Actually, you know, trying to do that whilst juggling childcare and dogs and work and broadband, like it hasn't been. And again, I think we've got to talk to one another. This is this kind of collective breath. If it has felt that it's been unfair because we've had groups of people that have been working a lot harder than others, or the perception is that we've been working a lot harder from others, or we've been working longer hours or shorter hours or whatever, I think we need to be having those conversations, because if we do then decide, or at the point that we say, okay, we're all now back in whatever the workplace of the future looks like for this business, now we're all here together. If we're going into it with some of that level of animosity or fear or upset, there we go, it's posted, sorry. But if we're going into it with that, what does that initially do for our relationships? Like, if Becky, if you and I start, you know, if we're back in the office together for a Monday, you've been working from home and I think actually you've had it quite easy and I haven't. If we never talk about that, my perception, well, you know, Becky's had it really easy for the last 18 months and that's really unfair. But our relationship will automatically be different, because I'm coming at it from a, you know, I don't like Becky because she's had it easy over the last 18 months. Whereas actually, until we have that conversation and understand each other's needs and understand the situation for both of us and what has been for both of us, then we can't move forward from that. You know, relationships are relationships, whether we're at home, at work, or wherever.
This is where leaders have got to be really brave.
Absolutely.
Have those conversations.
Absolutely.
And people have got to be honest as well.
Yeah, totally. And that level of honesty is going to be key. I think, you know, Brené Brown, if anybody's a Brené Brown fan, this is, you know, what she's been talking about for years. We've got to allow that level of vulnerability. Ignoring the fact, or, you know, just kind of in effect putting a pin in the page and saying, okay, that was the last 18 months, let's just move on. If we don't allow that collective sharing and that collective move on, we're starting from a place of animosity, we're starting from a place of unrest, we're starting from a place of discomfort. We've got to allow some of these hard conversations to happen, and there's absolutely no way that we can move on from it.
Yeah, sorry, we digressed a bit, didn't we, from you?
That's all right. I'm just
I'm watching the time. Go on. I'll be quiet now.
No, that's absolutely fine. No, but again, you know, the key here for me is we've got to be talking more. Yeah. And this is, I think, a really key, again, I'm conscious of time, but I think this is a really key point for us as HR professionals. What we have tended to do is the exec team have said, we need a policy or a process or a procedure on this. We've gone away to create it. It's been approved by the board. And then we've kind of, you know, done our ta-da moment whilst we're trying to launch it across the organization. And we get eye rolling and people say, well, don't know what you've done that for, didn't need it, hated it. The biggest thing for us, as I said, it has to be our people. We've got to understand what it is that our people need. And if that means that we just spend days, weeks, hours, months talking to people and having conversations, we have to start with those conversations. We've got to be listening, we've got to be talking, and we start to then solve the problems or the solutions or the challenges based on what our people have told us. We can do as many surveys as we want. Surveys are never going to give us the qualitative type of data and information that we need to create better places of work for our people. So it has to be about listening. So from an HR perspective, we have to start by redefining what it is that's needed. So redefine what it is that we're here to achieve. We then have to ensure that we are role modeling all of this stuff as we go through. And that this is the only way that we can be innovative and creative. From our people's perspective, we have to be visible. We have to be asking the questions. We have to be leading the change. We have to be listening too. If there is a big disconnect, that's then where we go into our strategic thinking. How can we close this balance, close this divide? What is it that we do? But we've got to stop this one size fits all copy and paste approach that everybody else is doing. And if it works there, we're going to implement it in our business. Your organization will be unique. The people within your organization are what make your organization unique. And you've got to start by putting your people first. Shall we leave it there, because I'm conscious of time? I hope that's answered everything for everybody.
So just one maybe controversial here. Have you seen much? It feels some people that I'm talking to, because people have been furloughed, I think some employees are feeling very bruised and battered after the last 18 months. Coming back to the workplace, it's like the employees want it all.
Yeah.
And it's got to be that give and take. Whilst it has been an horrendous last 15 months, ultimately coming back, we're still in business. We all need to be grateful that we have our jobs. I mean, personally for me, I was furloughed. I'm really glad after 3 months I was back in the workplace, and I love being back. But there feels this kind of shift with some organisations that employees want it all, and it's got to be that two-way process, that like they've got to meet the client, their employer as well. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think we will definitely start to, there's definitely been a huge shift, and I think the shift was coming anyway. I think when we look at more people wanting, again, I think historically people went to work, they worked a 9 to 5, you had a job for life, you stayed doing what you were doing, you were grateful for it, you got paid, you retired, pretty much that was it. There's no such thing as a job for life anymore. For many of us, there's no such thing as a job for life. And I think with the world the way it is, many of us do want much more purpose to our job. And because we want much more purpose to our job, we're much more cautious. Many of us are much more cautious about the types of organisations that we work for. Is this aligned to our values? Does this meet the purpose that I want to add? What's this giving to me? Some of us have to have a job. We have to pay the bills. We have to do that 9 to 5. And I think lots of things change based on the time of our life, the type of organisations that we're in, the type of markets that we're in. There's so many differentials that will determine all of that. But I do think many of us, myself included, over the last 18 months have really started to question what's important to me, what's important to my family, and how can I ensure that I get those needs met. Lots of people, again, lots of professionals that I am coaching want something totally different from their role. They're not necessarily saying we're going to leave, but they want that role to be different to allow them to really focus on what's important to them. Whereas 18 months ago, what was important was climbing the ladder, becoming partner, getting that promotion, getting that next salary milestone, all of those sorts of things. That's not to say that all of that is not important for them anymore, but they've also recognized that putting their kids to bed at night is important, that being able to see their parents more during the week is important, that being able to prioritize their well-being is important, that getting out for a walk more is important. And so they do want much more of that flex. If organizations are saying you can't have it, you are going back to exactly what we were doing 18 months ago, then I think that's where we have to, do you stay within the organisation or don't you? Yeah. And what do you weigh up as an individual? I can't remember the name of the company, but there was that the American company who basically sent out a message to all of their staff that basically said, we're no longer going to have diversity groups. We're going to close these forums. We're going to close the way we communicate. They sent out this huge thing that basically said, we're sick and tired of being dictated to by our staff. You're going to do it our way or else. Thinking they were doing something that was really going to, put them as, the world's greatest leaders who are being firm and really setting the path. 50% of their people left, 2 days after they'd put that notice out. So we do need that level of balance.
Yeah, I think
we're not going to know what the balance is until we speak to our people. Will I know, Becky, that your priorities have or haven't changed over the last 18 months until I have a conversation with you? No.
Yeah. And that's where I wonder if we're going to see this shift now. It is having those conversations, it's meeting halfway.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's some employees that they're saying they want everything and almost being not difficult, but you've got to meet the employer halfway as well. And actually, if that's not going to happen, the employee's got to take it upon themselves and say, well, actually, is this the right organisation?
Yeah, absolutely.
I do wonder if there's that whole shift around, I want it all, but I'm going to dig my heels in.
Yeah.
So then will we then have to go down sort of more of a performance route because they're digging their heels in, but they're not prepared to leave because it's not the right environment for them?
Yeah. And I definitely think we're going to see that. I think, you know,
all you HR professionals have got through the last 15 months.
There's more to come, but this is what I'm saying. It has to start with talking. If we do not talk and we do not listen, we do not understand it, we can think that we're putting the best policies, the best processes, the best procedures, the best ways of working in place. But if it doesn't meet the requirements of any of our people, and our people do not feel heard, they're not going to stay. They will be off like a shot.
Yeah. Thank you, Kelly. Sorry.
Welcome.
I'm chatting away.
That's quite all right. There were a couple of questions, but I think we've dealt with a lot of them, in particular the last one, which is, I think, the tension between what employees want and what the needs of the business are, which may lead to the flexible working request. I think that's really tricksy, but best managed by setting out what you may have some core expectations of, because fundamentally people need to be around. They need to be around to do the business, but not being closed. I hope you're looking at this at the same time as I'm talking, Kelly, to the idea of, well, if it has worked well up till now, is it possible to not lose the gains and the benefits of that? And quite a lot of other questions, which I'm going to say unless you just quick glance at them and you can give a 30-second answer, we might follow up with after the event. Do you want to have a quick look at those, Kelly?
Okay, yes. So David, is it a balance if the rest of the family is free on their personal time and sleep whilst I'm working at home? David, I think whatever your definition of balance is, I think we all have a different definition. My definition of balance may be different to yours. My definition of success may be very different for yours. So again, you know, I think we've got to, this is where it comes from redefining. What do we mean by these things? What does it mean to us? And how do we make it happen? So I think that's got to be your choice. I think that's absolutely got to be your choice. So that's David's.
We don't generally mention who the name of the person.
Oh, Kelly. Sorry. Apologies.
GDPR.
What have we got? We have a business where half of our colleagues are in positions that can be done in hybrid ways. Colleagues who are shop floor and therefore can't. It creates a bit of a divide in terms of flexibility. Yeah, again, I think we've covered that one, but I think there are some jobs, as we've said, there are some jobs that have to be done in a set time, in a set place. That's the way that it works. I think if we can explain that to people, you know, and people, again, I think some of it's got to be common sense. If we work, you know, if I'm a nurse in a hospital, I can't do that working at home from my home office. You know, it's just not going to be, it's not possible. Excuse me. If I'm a checkout worker in a supermarket, I can't do that from my home office. You know, there will be some roles, and some of it we've got to use some common sense. Some of the jobs we can never look at flexibly, and some of them we can. And I think, again, it comes from being open and honest. If we're open and honest that says we will not be able to do flexibility here, but we can do it here, people have a choice. I think that's kind of the way that we need to be working that one.
Shall we say that's enough? Do you think?
Yes. That works for everybody. Yes. Hope that was helpful.
Brilliant. Really
I'm
good.
I'm going to say, and I'm going to shut up. It was magnificent.
Thanks. I met your expectation then, James. There we go. Thank you.
Exceeded.
Thank you.
Brilliant as always.
Thanks, Becky. Thank you for the invite. It was really lovely to share an hour with you.
Thank you. And again, to all of you that are logged on, you know, big up to all of you, because you've all been absolute heroes over the last year. And I'm sure there's more challenge to come, but just encourage you all to take that collective deep breath, have faith, because you're doing a brilliant job. And thank you, Kelly, for all your words of encouragement as well. As always, everybody, because we will be logged off in a moment because we've only got to 11 o'clock. Please, any feedback that you'll get as soon as the call finishes, any ideas that you can forward to us for future topics would be absolutely amazing. Our next event will be in September. I believe that will be an afternoon time slot. I think we're going to try and revert back to how we used to do it when we met in person, that we'll do one event in a morning followed by the next event in an afternoon. So hopefully we can capture everybody with your diaries that you can all attend. But just thank you to all of you that have taken the time to log on and enjoy Kelly's presentation. If you want to connect with any of us, we're all on LinkedIn, and if you need Kelly's contact details, please contact myself or James and we can put you in touch with her as well. But thank you all for logging on, and yeah, look forward to seeing you all again in September. And thank you again, Kelly.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.